mind the software gap. You're watching Techstrong, gang. Hi, everyone. Happy Monday to you. Wow, it's Monday. That weekend went by in the blink of an eye. I felt like it was just Friday a second ago. But this is Labor Day week, so, it's going to be, well, for us here in the U.S., I'm sure a lot of people's thoughts will be out of the office come this Friday. And hopefully you get off Monday and enjoy a long weekend. But, of course, there'll be a lot going on between now and then, and there's a lot going on today. We have some good stuff to talk about. Let me introduce you to our panel for today. We have joining us Jack Poller, Dr. Stacy Thayer, Mitch Ashley, and of course, everyone's favorite Yankee fan, Mike Vizard. Panel, welcome. So, Mike, CISA, I didn't realize there was anyone left there. CISA put out a call for an all hands on deck mine for a national software gap to solicit actually volunteers, ideas, ways we can mine the software gap. Go ahead, tell us more about it.
It seems like, it's kind of one of those call to arms that come up every now and again, and they're trying to get everybody to kind of think of this in terms of maybe a national crisis that's right up there with, the idea that loose lips sink ships. And if we don't lock down all our software, we're going to have similar problems and issues going forward. And some folks would say it's long overdue, and other folks are probably going, where you been all my life? I've been talking about this forever now, and it's thank God you guys are all showing up. But Alan, you wrote an article about it. What's your take on what's going on here?
Yeah, so I should preface that the article I wrote really looks at it from sort of a DevSecOps perspective. But that being said, look, all kidding aside, I applaud CISA for recognizing this is an issue, though let's not call it a new issue. I applaud CISA for reaching out both to other government agencies to coordinate and collaborate on this. And I applaud CISA for calling out to the industry at large to help and collaborate on this. We do have a software gap in terms of monitoring and so forth. But here's the issue. It's not just the code, right? It's not just the codes. It's not just these open source. It's all the other little things that go in. It's the metadata. It's the attributes. It's the artifacts. It's all of the when we look at in this total of what goes into modern software, right? It's more than the code, and so and when we're talking about protecting mission critical stuff, there's a lot we've got to close every door we can that it can be exploited with. And so this is a pretty big task to undertake, to change our focus from just looking at code to looking at all those things that go on in code. So I applaud them. I think it's a great thing to do. I think it's really important on the DevSecOps side of the house, right? Because that's where we can really, jump into this before that code makes its way out, or at least iterate after we find out. Here's my downside, though. Quite frankly, I feel like CISA is a shell of its former self. Jen Easterly is left. My good friend Alan Friedman, who kind of father of S-bombs, just left. A lot of people have left. Their mission has been shrunken down because all of quite frankly, their budget was taken so we could have masked men running around the street grabbing people. That's the facts. And so I don't know, and it's a bit of a revolving door there. If they say something with the midterm elections are not right, are they going to get fired, whoever's left? I'd rather see this in some sort of private-public trust where this important subject can be addressed rather than in something that I feel is just going to be politicized and is just going to be churned. And 4 days ago, we were going to solve the Ukrainian-Russian war, and today we're not. 4 days later from now, this may be forgotten at CISA. That's my issue, is I just don't trust the government for these kinds of initiatives at this point.
There you go, spreading conspiracy theories again, Alan. No.
Yeah, that's me. That's the tinfoil hat right here.
Alan. You know what was different about this, without the folks that you mentioned that have left CISA, is this was issued from the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense R&D. So it was an R&D call for input, and part of me says R&D is great. Part of me says, yeah, but we know a lot about this problem already. What are we doing about it? Like, that seems to be, are we taking the actions we need to take already without doing more R&D? And yes, the threats are going to escalate. And if you look at AI, you want to look at whatever things might drive that. Sure, but our critical infrastructure is already under threat and susceptible to attack. And are we doing what we need to do to protect it already? So it kind of like, cows already out of the barn, close the door kind of thing.
Well, I think there's another aspect to this that when I read the actual reports, or as best I could, because governmentese is not my native language, but I think there's one of the things they highlighted, which is going beyond sort of things like SBOM, which is today we're creating new code faster than we're attempting to secure it. And I think that's the real gap. And I felt like this was a call to arms for more focus on capabilities to accelerate and speed up the code security process to get closer to the pace of code creation. And, Alan, I appreciate the call out of the government. Maybe the government isn't the right place to do this. And we have things like the CNCF, and I'm sorry that Tracy isn't here, but maybe this is the type of thing that CNCF and some of the other open source
or the OSF
can do.
OSF
is really pick up the mantle and say, we really need to how can we further the mission of shift left, secure code, tools that enable securing our environment rather than tools to create faster code generation.
Yeah,
and promote that.
Jack, you hit on something, and it's a bigger issue than just the instant case here, which is maybe we need to create these public-private, not-for-profit in the case of a Linux Foundation or whatever, but take it out of the hands of government leadership, have government as a partner in it. But in doing so, maybe we depoliticize it and make it more of a joint government industry initiative that doesn't change every 4 years or every time, there's a revolving door at some government agency.
Yeah, I agree with that, Alan. I think that's actually the trend, right? Since the new administration has pulled back on the government leadership in it and try to engage the private sector to do this. And I looked at the report too, Jack, and it's interesting. It's not just generating secure code and creating secure code as part of the process, because if you look at what AI is starting to do in the development cycle, it's tasks. It's setting up environments, it's creating plans, it's designing things, it's reviewing things. So you have to systemically address security in what AI is doing in the development process. Securing code scanning code is kind of the last step of one part of it. You can design a really insecure system with some really nice code that doesn't have any vulnerabilities in it. So that's just part of the answer. And if you believe, and I do, that AI will play a bigger and bigger role in doing more and more in the development, some people call for, AI will be doing all the development at some point. You got to address it systemically with what AI is creating, not just as code, but also the tasks and the workflows that it's doing.
Stacy, it's, I love what Alan and Mitch are saying, and I put it right up there with the rest of the kumbaya stuff that I hear from time to time. And here's my problem with it. Like every time we set up any of these so-called independent groups or agencies, inevitably they wind up kind of just becoming an entity unto themselves, and they're more interested in maintaining the entity than they are in solving the mission and the problem. Because, that's our culture as humans and organizational behavior. So how do we strike a balance between our good intentions and the road to hell?
I think what happens when you're given a project or anything that you're working on, exactly that you're kicking for self-preservation, and then the self-preservation for the project that you've been working on starts to come into play. And so we forget the goals. We forget what it is that we're doing in the big picture of things. And I think especially within a government organization, when there's a lot of processes, there's a lot of steps that go into play. You're navigating such a complex landscape that you begin to know it more than others, and you begin to defend it. And it becomes that mentality of, this is why we're doing this, and forgetting how it plays in that big picture, because you're seeing more information, you're doing a deeper dive. And I think one of the things that was interesting about this article is capturing the delta between what people know and what they're an expert in and what the rest of the world knows. And do we just have to trust those people who are experts? And then that creates this culture of trust within the government? Or are we able to work together and be able to understand that big picture, that being able to have people understand and being able to again, minimize those gaps actually creates a more trusted environment for all.
I mean, let's take an example of public health, right? If you are polluting a river and people are dying of cholera, you get called out for that. In software, we kind of, send you back to training school, but nobody gets called out, and there's never any kind of like, oh, this is actually hurting us collectively as a society. And I think that's where the conversation needs to start heading to.
That's a different. You're talking about the reason they're not called out is because of the licenses that the software is shipped with, and we accept. No one reads the license, but the license said basically that the author or the seller of the software is not responsible for any bugs or defects, and that's just the fact. But I will say, Mitchell, if you can make a note, send him some Colorado brownies before the next one so he gets into the kumbaya spirit. He's not
It's Monday. I don't
enough.
do that before 10 a.m.
All right. Well, just make a note.
It's
We got to
all
get him a
work
little
around.
kumbaya in here.
But hey, a good brownie can solve a lot of problems.
Yeah. He'll be singing right along with Harry Belafonte with us, man. No worries. Anyway, but no, Mike, the fact of the matter is there are no penalties for writing crappy software. Other than, one may say market conditions will prevail, and if you write enough crappy software, people will stop buying your software. Look what happened to Microsoft, right? There's your proof. It don't work. People still buy the software.
Well, they on the other hand, look at WebEx versus Zoom.
WebEx versus
Zoom.
So what do you mean by that, Jack?
Well, I think the market has pretty clearly spoken that it's flipped over from WebEx, which was one of the pioneers of video conferencing software, to, right? So,
Yeah, but I don't think it's because WebEx was buggy or not secure software. I think WebEx is probably more secure than Zoom. I think Zoom just built a better mousetrap.
Zoom had that web server that was open, sitting on everybody's.
Zoom said their share.
It overcame some challenges.
That's a very good point. That it wasn't necessarily
usability
security.
will always trump security.
Unfortunately, you're 100% correct.
Yeah.
Usability trumps security, and that's something that I think. Look, Jack, Mitch, Stacy, myself, we've been in the security world a long time. Mike has been also on it a long time. And that's a hard, painful lesson that if you don't acknowledge that, you're not really a security person, unfortunately.
Your security is my barrier to getting work done.
Yeah.
Right.
And
the attitude.
It is what it is. But again, don't shoot the messenger or don't kill the message because you don't like the messenger. How's that? right? This is a worthy goal. This is something we should strive for. I'd like to see someone pick up the baton and run with it.
I would just like to remind everybody of that wisdom from President Ronald Reagan, one of the most 9 dangerous words in the English language. Hello, I'm here from the government, and I'm here to help.
Yep. I knew that's where you're going.
I thought that was 8 words.
I don't know. I'll have to count them later.
All right.
He said it a lot. I don't know if he originated it, but
Yeah, he did say it a lot. All right. What a way to end the first block here on Ronnie Reagan. All right. We're going to take a break on Techstrong Gang. We're coming back at you with Shifting Privacy Left.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Hey, folks, we're back, and there's a startup out there, and I'm sure others will follow suit, talking about the need to shift data privacy left. Well, we already shifted security left, and we're trying to do the same with compliance, so maybe this makes sense. But I also hear developers screaming about the fact that everything is shifting left and they're just getting overloaded and they can't handle it all. Stacy, is there some way to have our cake and eat it too here? Or is this, maybe asking too much of folks and we need to just figure out some other way to solve this problem?
Well, I think it can absolutely be done. It depends on how you're training folks, what you're setting the expectations for, and who you're working with, and knowing your people. You're right. Things are continuously shifting left, and it makes sense if they're prepared for it and they're ready to take on that responsibility. One of the things that's obviously becoming a challenge is the cognitive overload of these developers and these folks that are now saying, okay, so I have to make sure there's no bugs. I have to make sure the software works. And I have to make sure I know how to write secure code with best secure coding practices, plus go through the test, all of the things that come in with the software development cycle, but then the added icing and cherry, if you want to call it, of then adding all data privacy and security and all of that. And so I think when you're looking at the developers and you're looking at the people that are working on this, are they able to do it? And maybe a couple are. If you have some people on your team and 1 or 2 people are really able to do that, that doesn't mean that that's the bar for the whole team, right? And we need to look at your team and say, okay, here's who's strong with this. Let's have them lead the charge. Here's who's strong in this angle, and start to look at your developers more as not just developers, but developers with security strengths, just the same way we look at security professionals. Who's strong in data privacy? Who's strong in understanding application security? All of that, I think, will start to become subcultures within the developer community as well. And it will tie together. We already see it. We see this at DevSecOps. We see these at these events, that there is a strong connection between developers and security. And as that becomes more evolved, they'll become hybrid and start to have their own cultures and skills nested within that left shift.
Mm-hmm. I guess, my issue with it, though, is like, just because I'm good at something doesn't mean I want to do it. And I certainly don't want to do it all the time. And so I sometimes feel like, maybe Mitch jump in here, but when it comes to security, compliance, data privacy, it's like, we just pass around the can full of straws, and whoever gets the short one is on that team, and no one's actually standing up and saying, oh boy, pick me.
He definitely needs more brownies, Mitch.
I'll jump in for Mitch, which is one of the groups not mentioned, which I'd really like to see included, is the product folks, right? And talking about privacy, a lot of what this particular startup is looking at and others in terms of data privacy is, okay, we've collected your social security number, your birth date, all this private information. Now we have to make sure that from a software development point of view that we've secured all this and we understand that it's private information and all that stuff. From a product specification, do we really need all this information? Is there any reason when you log on to a website, you have to give your birth date to log on to a website? You shouldn't have to give private information unless it's fundamentally absolutely necessary for the organization to have it. So it'd be from a privacy protection point of view and shifting left, let's shift left even further and have the people who say to the developer, put a data entry box in here and collect your social security number. Why are we doing that?
I think shift left is antiquated. It's not about having the developer do the work or someone further up the cycle. I think it's about automating security, right? If you're adding a field, it's a social security number to your app. Guess what? Your IDE and the plugins that are using it, whether it's, Hound Dog AI or somebody else, can say, all right, here's the code to secure that. You don't even have to worry about it. It's taken care of, right? Or why are you asking for that, right? Or guardrails say, that's not something we want to collect. Or if you want to collect that, we already have a way to do that. Let me show you how. Let me point you to the library of the code that does that. So it isn't about I don't think it's about scanning code and telling developers to fix it. We were talking about before, Jack, of the acceleration of how much code we're generating. There's a tipping point where we generate so much code, there aren't enough people in the world to secure it, to fix all the vulnerabilities that we generated. So guess what? You've got to start fixing or not generating problems in the first place, or fix them as you generate them, which I think is probably more the correct way to do it. So before code makes it into your IDE that's coming out of AI or a code generator, or as I'm putting it into an IDE, that's when it gets corrected. And as if it's that way, the developer isn't doing extra work. It's accepting, yep, that's a better way to do it. Thanks, move on, I'm done.
Mm-hmm. I've seen, and I don't remember who told me this story, but there's also an issue where folks building software know too much about the customers. And this incident involved folks who were building software for a bank in Boston, and they knew exactly how much money every star of the Boston Celtics had who was using that bank in their accounts. And there was no reason for them to know that, or they didn't really, they needed data to go build their apps, but they could have blocked that data out, but didn't. And I think that there's just a lot of practices that we let people do because we just kind of, didn't think it through entirely. But I think
the poster child for that is I think it was Michael Jackson's medical records in the hospital or something got made public or released somehow. And that was a big thing behind the whole HIPAA movement, right? At least for medical records, healthcare information, it is data privacy. And there's real teeth. The thing about HIPAA is, like we were talking about before, no one ever gets in trouble for making bad software, it seems. Well, people do get in trouble for HIPAA violations, right? And there's some real teeth in that. Maybe that's what we need overall for data privacy, right?
Apparently they get in trouble for selling airline seats that don't have windows too. So, we're getting real about this stuff.
See, if I hang on long enough, he's going to get less kumbaya. Watch this.
So Mike, the good news is there are a number of there's quite a lot of startups that are doing synthetic data generation to help developers with this, which says, okay, I have a database that's going to have social security number, name, date, birth, and all of that, and you can generate a synthetic database to test your code without ever having to dump real data and have access to that sensitive data.
Stacy, what's the status of these regs, though? Alan mentioned HIPAA, and Europe has its regs, but it seems like a lot of them are all over the place. There's not a whole lot of consistency, and there's certainly no national data privacy movement. So what's your assessment of what's real here?
Well, and that's the question, is who's making them, right? When HIPAA first came around, HIPAA was really just about data privacy or medical data privacy anyway, universally, not just in, I was in grad school. I'm dating myself here when HIPAA came around, but I remember them talking to us and saying, no, this means you don't leave a piece of paper out. You make sure that everything is locked up. And you saw medical offices, you saw the things around you change. And I think one of the things that I see is when it comes to the online world is half the country doesn't necessarily even have access to the things that technologists have access to or are able to do that. So it's versus medical records and all of that they understand. And I think when we talk about, okay, how do we get a movement behind data privacy? I still wonder if people are really understanding what data privacy means to the common, like everyday life person out there, your average person. And, if I told my mom, hey, do you know what about data privacy? She always says, well, what do they need to know about me? Medical records make sense. They know that they don't want everybody to know what's gone on with the doctor. So I think when we look at these projects, we're looking at who is doing it, what's the motivation behind them, who's pushing for it, and is it helping everybody? Is it helping just some people? So there has to be enough cry out. There has to be enough protesting. I don't want my data, my privacy revoked. I mean, you see this in certain states where states are saying, no, you have to tell me if you're going to be selling my data. So I think we need more of that. We need more pushback. We need people caring about their privacy more. Once people care about it and they understand it and they understand the implications of it, when I teach undergrads and I explain to them what happens to their data and the way that actually social media works, it's like their eyes get huge. Really, ads are targeted to just me and I can't trust everything I see on social media. It's like the thought process isn't necessarily there. And I think when we understand it and the realities of data privacy and the dangers of it, then we'll see more of a regulation behind it. But the push has to come from the people and people understanding it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the great data privacy riots of 2026. It should be fun.
We should have people rioting in the streets, but no. That's a little Saturday Night Live reference for those out there who don't recognize it. Anyway, hey, let's take a break here. We're going to come back and talk about our C block. Here's a topic everyone loves to get behind: drones. You're watching Techstrong, gang.
SecurityBoulevard.com is the leading resource for news, analysis, and education on challenges facing the cybersecurity industry. SecurityBoulevard.com covers all aspects of cybersecurity, including data security, DevSecOps, cloud security, application security, network security, security threats, and more. SecurityBoulevard.com has the largest selection of security content, featuring breaking news, blog posts, podcasts, and more. Visit www.securityboulevard.com to learn more. SecurityBoulevard.com, home of Security Bloggers Network.
Hey folks, we're back and we're going to shift gears slightly. We're going to talk about, actual physical security and locking down the border using drones. There's a sheriff over in Arizona who's using some federal funds that he got to get some drones to monitor the border and see who's crashing over the border and try to then maybe intercept them, I guess is the plan. Of course, for all I know, somebody on the other side of the border is probably taking pot shots at drones. But Jack, are drones going to be everywhere part of our physical security? Or maybe they already are and they're just flying everywhere, left, right, and center. But it just seems like every passing day, there's another drone doing something.
They are. And I think this is, you can look at drones as the equivalent to the electric vehicle revolution over regular cars. It's an evolution. Sheriffs and police departments, law enforcement officials have been using aerial surveillance for many years, but it is incredibly expensive to fly a helicopter or a small plane to patrol the border or other areas. I mean, thousands of dollars. A jet helicopter is $1,000 an hour, easy to fly. And the types of drones we're talking about here are not the little things that you buy at Costco. It's not a little 1 foot type thing. These are about 10 foot big, wide, small planes, basically. And they can stay in the air for 3 to 5 hours. They have both battery. It's a hybrid propulsion, battery and electric, just like a hybrid car. And it allows the law enforcement officials to get aerial surveillance and particularly on the border in areas where it's mountainous, where you can't get vehicles. And it serves many purposes. It does serve for law enforcement for security on the border, but also for search and rescue. And they're very, very useful for search and rescue and can get to places very quickly that people can't get easily to find it. So I think we are going to see more and more of this.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, one of the other big changes is because these things are big and heavy and they're really airplanes, we're having to adjust the regulations to figure out how to fit them in with manned aircraft in the skies, right? Your commercial drones that you go out and buy at your store, little DJI, little tiny quadcopters, are limited to 400 feet above ground elevation, and they have to be line of sight because you don't want them flying into a helicopter or an airplane. But these bigger vehicles, you actually do need them to share the airspace with other planes. So there's a big issue to figure out how to get that done. And once that happens, we will see a big explosion in the use of these things.
So I think drones are one of the great untold stories of the last 10, 15 years. I think when we look back, hindsight's always 20/20. When we look back at wars of the early 21st century, we're going to realize that in many ways, drones have replaced manned aircraft. Drones have replaced missiles. Mm-hmm. Drones, whether delivering payloads or reconnaissance and observation, have become the standard. And so, you have a country like Iran or North Korea supplying Russia with hundreds, thousands of drones, whether they're the kamikaze drones or what have you. You have Ukraine building their own drones and flying them into Russia and doing things, again, attacking, reconnaissance. We have drones at borders. We have drones, performing all of these things. And why, if we can start making autonomous cars, what makes you think we wouldn't have autonomous drones?
We already do. I mean,
we do. So, they'll avoid, and theoretically, they'll avoid manned aircraft and they show up, or maybe they transmit a signal for manned aircraft to stay away or what have you. But certainly, I think drones have gone mainstream. And you want to know what? I think this is a good use of drones. I don't know if you necessarily need these big monsters. You could probably get away with a good coverage with some smaller, cheaper drones. But I do think, there's a cat and mouse game. Right? What makes you think the guys, what do they call the people who smuggle immigrants in coyotes or whatever? What makes you think the coyotes don't get counter drones?
Exactly.
Or
it is democratized, Alan, right? I mean, you talk about the Ukraine example where they're 3D printing parts of they're attaching an RPG, which is, apparently readily available. I don't have any handy myself, but, they're attainable for folks that, want to do guerrilla warfare. Now we have guerrilla air warfare with drones.
I mean, where does it stop, Mitchell? There's like a whole universe on my thumbnail here, man. I need more of those brownies, but
more brownies.
But
we'll get some to Mike. I've got some on the way to Mike. So he'll be ready tomorrow.
But this is the reality, I think, of the world we live in today, and I think we start marrying AI into these drones, and they do become autonomous. They do become more effective, and. I was reading yesterday an article about, it was a General Dynamics. Someone was putting out the next version of the Navy's aircraft carrier fighter jets, the FA-XX it is right now. And there's a new, I think, F-42 or something. There's the next Air Force jet and everything. And I'm thinking to myself, why can't we replace these with drones and have unmanned autonomous planes doing this kind of work, this monitoring the border. My question, though, is intervention, Mike. You mentioned intervention. What do we mean? We phone home and send the guys over to go get them? Or is the next step saying, hey, let's zap them? You know what I mean? Hey, we're going to immobilize these people with like some taser kind of equipment or something. I don't know. But do we arm the drones? And that's a step, maybe for me, that goes too far, but I'd be interested to see what comes of it.
Stacy, are we on a slippery slope here? Yeah, because, Mitch's brownies haven't arrived yet, but this does feel like a step towards a surveillance state. But
well, and I lie, when we're talking about drones and AI, my immediate thought, my sci-fi brain goes, okay, and that's how the Terminator goes.
Yeah, pretty much.
Let's create an army of AI drones, send them in, teach them how to fight. Well, we don't learn, and then they, anyway. Now
But let me ask you a question. If we don't, you don't think someone else will?
Well, that's just it, right? I mean, this is like you can either lean into technology, or you can swim upstream against it, right?
Yeah,
and so I think the more
this is the point in the show where we make the arbitrary Star Trek reference for Alan, right? Because there's a whole episode about this where the two sides fight and then nobody actually gets killed, and you got to show up for a thing that says you're going to get
to the demolition chamber, right? You were a victim of an attack.
But Stacy, finish the thought. Sorry about it.
No, that's okay. Then I'm thinking, well, bring the brownies, say hello,
and talk about Star Trek. Mike's mind is expanding right before us here.
The world is a better place now.
But you're right. That is the world we're headed towards, and
I think, again, that this fear of technology, I mean, it's something that's been around forever. And, it's like when people go, okay, or is AI going to take my job? And I say, well, there's some horse and buggy carriages that were probably very upset when the car came around. We're a better place for it. We lean into the technology sometimes, it happens. I've been really paying attention to this AI development and what we're enabling folks with or machines with, because to be able to say, yeah, we can send a drone. We don't have to send a human. No human lives were hurt during the making of this drone, so to speak, right? There's huge win in that. And to Alan's point, if we don't do it, somebody else will. Now, of course, this is how we ended up with the H-bomb. If we don't do it, somebody else will. So do we do it on our terms or someone else's? That's extreme. And I've probably watched Oppenheimer too many times. But
let me just say, there's an argument to be made that because we did that, there's never been an H-bomb used.
Exactly.
Though countries have them, it's never been used. And maybe that's, I don't know. I mean, this is mind-expanding kind of stuff.
No, it is. And so many times come up at, the Great Jurassic Park, where we were so busy thinking if we could, we didn't stop. If we could, we didn't stop to think if we should, right? Kind of thing, right? We know we can do these things, but we're doing the best with the best of intentions. We don't know what the future will bring for it, but we're doing it, as long as I think we go in eyes wide open and understanding, yes, we're going into this, but yes, what are the costs of it? Is it surveillance? Is it compromising of our security? Is it going to be normal where you're outside, doing your yard work and drones are flying over, right? We've accepted camera use. Remember when cameras were first coming up around London and on streets? Oh, it's surveillance state. Well, people are used to it now.
Yeah. Well, I will tell you, down here in Florida, We've had situations where neighbors are shooting neighbors' drones down because they say, we don't want them photographing, videoing, spying on my stuff. And so they shoot
your drones off my lawn.
Go fly a drone in front of your own house.
Well, Alan, we may have accidentally stumbled onto maybe part of the answer here, which is drone-delivered brownies. I think that is one way to
Mitchell, you're such an entrepreneur at heart. I love it.
I'm always
Mitchell, the famous Amos of brownies.
I was going to say, I just heard Mitch declare war on Amazon.
Between the A and B block?
Exactly. Let me, okay.
Yeah, if it works, we'll see you tomorrow. If it works with Mike, we're on to something.
All right. You guys are crazy. Hey, let's. I think that's a sign that we need to end today's show.
Please stop this now.
Enjoy your Monday, folks. Hey, we're one day closer to that long weekend. Of course, we've got Techstrong TV following. Going to have an announcement next Tuesday on Techstrong Gang 2 about a new way you can interact with the gang. Stay tuned for that. Stay tuned for Techstrong TV. Jack, Stacy, Mitch, Mike, thanks for joining us. Thank you for watching. You can catch individual blocks of the Techstrong Gang on our Techstrong TV YouTube channel. So check that out as well. You don't have to watch all 30 minutes or 40 minutes or what have you. But until then, this is Alan Schimmel for Techstrong Gang. We're out.